The night someone tried the back door, the dog didn't bark. He went straight to the wall. Metal rattles against the rear handle, sharp and sudden. Logan drops low behind the counter before the sound finishes, breath tight, eyes fixed on the hallway. Boone doesn't move toward the door. He presses his nose to the freezer wall, paw scratching once, slow and deliberate. The lights flicker. The handle stops. And something inside the wall shifts. Logan Hayes did not lose everything in a single day. It had taken 18 months. 18 quiet, careful months of signatures, refinance notices, revised account statements, and polite conversations that ended with the word temporary. By the time Linda filed the divorce papers, the house in Pagosa Springs was no longer in his name. The retirement account he thought was still growing had been rolled, transferred, divided. The small parcel of wooded land outside town, the one he'd planned to leave to Tyler, had shifted ownership in a way that looked clean on paper. Clean, legal, finished. On the night he left, the mountains were already sealed in early winter. Snow pressed against the pine trees in thick silence. The porch light flickered once before steadying, casting a pale cone across the driveway where his old Ford F-150 waited, engine ticking in the cold. Inside the garage, cardboard boxes were stacked in careful rows, medals in one, old unit photos in another, a folded American flag wrapped in plastic, a pair of desert boots still holding fine dust from Anbar province in the seams. $17,800 sat in his checking account, while Logan stood there longer than necessary, keys in hand, staring at the concrete floor as if it might offer coordinates. Boone lay across the garage threshold. The German shepherd's body blocked the opening, paws stretched forward, chin resting on the cold cement. He didn't growl, didn't bark. He simply refused to move. "Come on," Logan said quietly. Boone's ears twitched, but his weight stayed anchored. Inside the house, the hallway light clicked off. Linda had already gone upstairs. The air between them had thinned to nothing weeks ago. No raised voices, no slammed doors. Just logistics, boxes, emails from attorneys. Logan stepped toward Boone and crouched, resting a hand against the dog's thick neck. The fur was warm under his palm. "It's time." Boone lifted his head slowly, eyes fixed not on Logan, but on the dark interior of the garage, as if memorizing it. Then he stood and stepped aside. Logan walked out first. The metal garage door rolled down with a mechanical whine. Halfway down, it caught for a fraction of a second before slamming shut with a hard metallic bang. Logan's shoulders locked. The sound split the night clean in two. For an instant, the snow disappeared. The mountain air dissolved into heat and dust. A different metal door somewhere in Fallujah had slammed under impact before the first mortar round hit. His breath shortened without permission. His knees bent slightly, center of gravity lowering, eyes scanning for origin, for movement, contact front. The engine ticking beside him snapped him back. Colorado, winter, his truck. Boone had already shifted position, standing between Logan and the driveway, ears high, watching him instead of the street. Logan exhaled through his nose. Slow. Count 4. Release. He opened the truck door and tossed the last duffel bag into the back seat. Boone jumped in after it without being told. The house remained dark. He didn't look at the upstairs window, didn't look at the porch. When he turned the key, the truck coughed once before settling into a low rumble. Headlights swept across the snow and caught the wooden sign at the edge of the property. Iron Skillet Grill. The sign leaned slightly, its paint peeling. The building sat farther down the access road, barely visible behind a stand of pine trees. Closed for 7 years. Too far off the highway. Too expensive to remodel, Linda had said. Too much work. In the settlement, it had been transferred to him. The restaurant no one wanted. Logan shifted into drive and eased down the gravel lane. Tires crunched through thin ice. He didn't understand why she'd left it. Everything else had been moved with surgical precision. Every account balanced, every asset repositioned. But the restaurant, land, structure, name, sat untouched. Snow gathered against its boarded windows. The back entrance sagged slightly on rusted hinges. A wind chime someone had forgotten years ago clinked faintly in the cold air. Boone stood up in the passenger seat, nose pressed to the glass as they rolled past. Logan slowed. The truck's headlights swept across the faded letters on the building's front wall. Iron Skillet Grill. He remembered the first summer they'd opened it. Tourists stopping off Highway 160, and hunters in camo ordering coffee before dawn, the smell of bacon and wood smoke rising into the mountain air. He remembered painting the trim himself, installing the fryer with his own hands, fixing a faulty gas line in the middle of a snowstorm. He had signed papers back then, too. So why had she left this? The truck idled for a long moment in front of the dark building. Boone gave a low huff. Not anxious, not aggressive, just alert. Logan watched the wind move loose snow across the parking lot in thin silver waves. 18 months of preparation. 18 months of documents. And at the end of it, this. A closed restaurant on the edge of town. $17,800. A pickup truck with 212,000 pesos. A dog who refused to leave thresholds quietly. He shifted back into drive. The small rental cabin he'd secured sat farther up the mountain, closer to the tree line. One room. Wood stove. Thin walls. Cheap. As the truck climbed the narrow road, snow began to fall again. Soft, steady, unhurried. Logan kept his eyes on the curve ahead. He had lost the house. He had lost the accounts. He had lost the illusion that paperwork meant partnership. But he still had Boone, and he still had the restaurant. The truck's headlights disappeared into the trees, leaving the Iron Skillet Grill alone in the dark, its windows black, its sign leaning, its door locked. Behind those walls, something remained untouched. The wind pressed against the building once more, rattling a loose sheet of metal near the back entrance. Inside the cab, Boone finally settled down, chin resting on Logan's thigh. But Logan drove without looking back. He did not yet know what had been left behind, but neither did the man who believed he had taken everything. The next morning, Logan drove back down the mountain before the sun cleared the ridge. The snow had hardened overnight. Tires crunched over a thin crust of ice as he turned off Highway 160 and onto the narrow access road leading to Iron Skillet Grill. Pine branches sagged under white weight. The world felt sealed, sound absorbed by frost. The building looked smaller in daylight. Peeling brown paint. A sagging gutter. The old Iron Skillet logo hanging crooked over the door. The parking lot had faded lines barely visible beneath packed snow. Boone stepped out of the truck first. He didn't wander. Didn't sniff aimlessly. He walked the perimeter. Logan watched him move. Nose low, his shoulders tight, scanning. The dog paused at the rear corner of the building, where the loading entrance faced the trees, his ears angled forward. Logan keyed the front door open. The smell hit him first. Old grease, damp wood, stale air that hadn't circulated in years. Dust lay thick over the counter. Chairs were stacked upside down on tables like abandoned barricades. He stood still just inside the doorway. Clear left, clear right. Reflex. He exhaled slowly and stepped forward. Boot prints tracked across the tile floor, his own from years ago frozen in memory. He could still see where the coffee station had stood, where hunters used to sit before sunrise, where Linda once laughed while counting receipts behind the counter. Now the silence pressed in from every direction. Boone entered behind him, but did not relax. And he moved toward the back hallway that led to the kitchen and storage area. His nails clicked softly against tile. Logan followed. The kitchen felt colder than the dining room. Stainless steel surfaces dulled by oxidation. A commercial stove coated in a thin gray film. The walk-in freezer door hung slightly ajar. Rubber seal cracked. He flipped the breaker panel near the office. Nothing happened. He checked the main power switch along the exterior wall. Someone had cut the line clean at the junction box. Not torn. Not weather damage. Cut. Logan ran his thumb across the severed wire. The edges were straight. He didn't say anything. Boone stood near the back exit, body angled toward the door. A low, almost inaudible hum vibrated in his chest. "There's nobody here," Logan muttered. Still, he walked the back hallway. Oh, the rear door latch was intact. Snow outside showed no fresh tracks. The forest beyond the lot was still. He returned to the breaker panel and made a mental list. New wiring, inspection, plumbing check, roof patch near the vent. He still had $17,800. By noon, he had called an electrician he knew from town, a quiet man named Hector, who owed him a favor from a hunting trip years ago. "Place been dead a while," Hector said, stepping through the front door with a toolbox in hand. "You sure about this?" Logan nodded. Hector knelt at the cut junction box and let out a low whistle. "This wasn't wildlife." "No." "You planning to open?" "Yes." Hector looked around the empty dining room. "You'll need more than power." "I know." By late afternoon, electricity flickered back through the building, but lights hummed overhead. The old ice machine sputtered once, then coughed to life with a grinding noise that echoed down the hallway. The sound hit Logan's spine before his brain processed it. Metal rattle. Sudden mechanical churn. For a split second, he was back inside a transport truck outside Ramadi, the generator failing just before incoming. His hand shot instinctively toward his hip. Empty. The ice machine rattled again, then steadied. Boone was already beside him, pressing his flank against Logan's leg, steady weight grounding him. "I'm good," Logan murmured, though his jaw had locked. He walked over and unplugged the ice machine. Silence returned. By dusk, Hector packed up and left, promising to return in 2 days with new wiring for the freezer unit. But Logan locked the front door and moved into the small office near the kitchen. A desk, a filing cabinet, a cracked leather chair. He planned to sleep there. He set up a folding cot, spread an old army wool blanket across it. Boone lay across the office doorway, blocking entry the way he had blocked the garage threshold the night before. Outside, wind picked up. Metal signage clanged softly against the building's side. Logan leaned back in the chair and opened an old ledger he'd found in the desk. Receipts from 8 years ago. Vendor invoices. Orders for smoked brisket, eggs, flour, fryer oil. No recent activity, no hidden transfers. Just a restaurant that had closed and never reopened. Why leave this? Linda had transferred everything else with precision. Why hand him a liability? Around midnight, the building settled under dropping temperatures. Wood creaked. The heater fan ticked as it cooled. Logan drifted in and out of shallow sleep. Then, a scraping sound, soft, rhythmic. Boone's head lifted instantly. The sound came from the direction of the kitchen. Not metal shifting, not wind. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Logan rolled off the cot silently. No weapon. Just instinct. He stepped into the hallway, shoulders brushing the wall, hand grazing doorframes as he moved. Old habit. Feel structure. Maintain orientation. The scraping stopped. He paused outside the kitchen. Boone. The dog moved ahead of him, low and controlled. They entered together. The kitchen lights flickered once. Boone walked directly toward the far wall near the walk-in freezer. He began to paw at the base of the metal paneling. Not frantically, deliberate. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Logan crouched beside him. "What is it?" Boone continued, nose pressed close to the seam where the wall met the floor. Logan knocked on the panel with his knuckles. Solid. He knocked again, a foot higher. A dull thud. Then slightly to the left. Hollow. He froze, tapped again. The sound shifted, metal over empty space. Boone's ears snapped forward. The lights flickered once more, dimming the room for a fraction of a second before returning to full glow. Wind howled against the rear door. Logan stood slowly. He stepped back and studied the wall from a distance. The panel looked no different from the others. Same screws, same finish. But Boone didn't move. He kept pawing at that exact seam. Scrape, scrape, and Logan ran his hand along the metal and felt a faint irregularity near one screw head, newer than the others. He didn't touch it yet. Instead, he stood still in the center of the kitchen, listening. The building felt different now, not abandoned, occupied by something unfinished. Boone stopped scratching and sat, staring at the panel as if waiting for permission. Logan swallowed once. Outside, a truck engine passed along the highway, distant but clear. He reached down and rested his hand on Boone's head. "Tomorrow," he said quietly. He turned off the kitchen lights. As they walked back to the office, Boone glanced once over his shoulder toward the wall. Logan did not. He lay down on the cot but did not sleep. Somewhere inside that wall, something waited. And for the first time since the divorce papers were filed, Logan felt something other than loss, uncertainty, and the faint beginning of suspicion. Logan did not sleep. He lay on the narrow cot with one forearm across his chest, eyes open in the dark, counting the seconds between gusts of wind against the siding. Boone stayed at the office doorway, chin lifted, ears twitching at every shift in temperature, every tick of cooling metal. Around 3 a.m, the building settled again. A single pop from the kitchen. Logan's pulse jumped before he could stop it. He waited. Nothing followed. He rose before dawn, joints stiff from the cold. He brewed coffee on a portable camp stove he'd set on the desk, steam rising into the pale office light. Boone watched him, but didn't move toward the door this time. He kept his attention angled toward the hallway. But Logan stepped into the kitchen as the first thin gray light pushed through the boarded front windows. The wall looked ordinary in daylight. Metal paneling, faint scratches, rows of screws. Boone walked straight to the same seam and placed his nose against it. No scratching this time, just pressure. Logan crouched and ran his hand across the lower section again. The newer screw head caught his thumb. It wasn't factory. Someone had removed this panel before. He stood and retrieved a screwdriver from Hector's forgotten tool pouch near the breaker box. He worked slowly. One screw, then another. Each one came loose too easily. Boone stepped back but did not leave. When Logan removed the final screw and tugged the panel forward, it resisted slightly, then gave way with a dry metallic whisper. Cold air breathed out from behind it. Well, not freezer cold. Stored air. There was a gap, about 18 inches deep, and inside that gap sat a small steel safe bolted to the concrete foundation. Logan froze. The safe wasn't new. The paint had chipped along the corners. A rotary dial faced outward. No obvious damage, no attempt to break it open. He felt the back of his neck tighten. "I didn't put that there," he muttered. Boone let out a soft huff. Logan examined the bolts securing the safe. Industrial grade, not something thrown together. He wiped dust from the dial and leaned closer. The metal carried a faint smell, oil and age. His mind began running through possibilities. Previous owner, insurance papers, tax documents, or something Linda had overlooked, or something she had known about. He sat back on his heels and looked at Boone. "Oh, you smelled it." Boone blinked slowly. Logan stood and checked the back door again. Locked. No footprints outside in the snow. No vehicles in the lot. The safe had been sitting there for years, waiting. He returned to the office and searched the filing cabinet for anything resembling a combination. Old payroll forms, vendor lists, health inspection certificates. Nothing. Back in the kitchen, he stared at the dial. He didn't remember installing a safe, but he had been deployed twice during the early years of the restaurant. Linda had handled much of the paperwork then. He placed his fingers lightly on the dial and turned it once, listening. Click. He turned it again. The sound of the mechanism inside was faint, but precise. He stopped. Boone's head lifted sharply. A vehicle slowed outside. Logan stood instantly. He moved to the back hallway and looked through the narrow side window near the loading dock. A black SUV idled at the edge of the parking lot. Engine running, windows tinted. It stayed there longer than a passing vehicle should. Boone stepped beside him, body angled forward, silent. Logan didn't step outside. He didn't wave. He watched. After nearly a full minute, the SUV rolled forward, circled once through the empty lot, then exited back onto the access road. Logan memorized the last 4 digits of the license plate before it disappeared behind the trees. He returned to the safe. The air in the kitchen felt heavier now. He dialed random numbers at first. Nothing. He stopped and leaned both hands on the countertop. Think. If Linda had installed it. If it predated the divorce. What numbers would she use? Anniversary? Tyler's birthday? The restaurant's opening date? He tried the opening date first. The dial resisted. He tried Tyler's birth year. Nothing. He exhaled slowly and rested his forehead briefly against the cool metal paneling. Boone suddenly gave a low growl. Logan straightened. The growl wasn't directed at the door. It was aimed at the safe. He watched the dog carefully. Boone stepped closer and nudged the dial lightly with his nose. Logan stared at the numbers. Something about the sequence felt familiar. 5 years before he and Linda married. That was when he first started testing a house-made smoked sauce in the kitchen. Before the wedding. Before the loans. Before everything became shared. He remembered writing the first batch number in a notebook. Black timber. He had used the year as a marker, as he turned the dial deliberately to that year. Paused, then reversed direction. The mechanism inside gave a faint metallic shift. He held his breath and pulled the handle. The safe door opened. Inside were no stacks of cash, no gold, no jewelry. There were documents, neatly sealed in a waterproof envelope, and a small glass jar wrapped in wax paper. Logan removed the envelope first. He opened it carefully. The top sheet bore a registered trademark filing. Black Timber Smoked Sauce. Registration date, 5 years prior to marriage. Filed under Logan Hayes, sole proprietor. Attached beneath it were formula documents. Ingredient ratios. Smoking process details. Distribution trial agreements with 2 regional food suppliers from years ago. His name appeared in clean legal print. He did not remember filing it, as he remembered experimenting with the sauce. He did not remember protecting it. The jar remained inside the safe. He lifted it next. The wax paper peeled back to reveal dark, thick sauce sealed under an old metal lid. A faint smoky scent escaped. Boone sniffed once and sneezed. Logan sat back against the wall, documents in his lap. 5 years before marriage. Separate property. His breathing slowed. Outside, wind pushed snow across the parking lot in thin spirals. He heard another vehicle pass on the highway. Then, a crunch of tires. Closer this time. Logan moved instantly to the hallway window. The same black SUV rolled back into the lot. It did not idle at the edge. It drove all the way to the back of the building. Boone's posture shifted from alert to ready. Logan closed the safe door quietly, but did not spin the dial. He slid the metal panel loosely back into place without screwing it in. The SUV engine cut. A door opened, footsteps on snow. Boone positioned himself between Logan and the rear entrance. The doorknob rattled once, hard. Logan's jaw tightened. The knob rattled again. Then a fist pounded against the metal door. "Open up!" a male voice called. Logan didn't answer. Boone's growl deepened, steady and controlled. Another pound against the door. "Mr. Hayes! I know you're in there!" The voice sounded familiar. Not friendly, not patient. Logan stepped toward the door, but kept his body angled to the wall. "Who is it?" "Carl Whitmore." Silence hung in the hallway. Boone's hackles lifted. Logan's grip on the doorknob did not turn. Snow fell harder outside, as Carl knocked again, slower this time. "We need to talk about that building." Logan stared at the metal surface separating them. He glanced once toward the kitchen wall. The safe, the documents, the sauce, and Boone standing steady at his side. The man outside believed this place was worthless. Logan now knew it wasn't. He opened the door only a few inches. Cold air rushed in. Carl Whitmore stood in a tailored winter coat, polished boots planted in snow, expression controlled. His eyes flicked past Logan into the dark interior. "You planning to reopen?" Carl asked evenly. Logan did not step aside. "Why are you here?" Carl smiled faintly. "Because sometimes abandoned properties create complications." Boone stepped forward until his shoulder brushed Logan's leg. Carl's gaze dropped to the dog, and then returned to Logan's face. "I'd hate for you to run into unexpected trouble." The wind picked up behind him. Snow swirled between them. Logan felt something settle inside his chest. Not fear, not yet anger. Clarity. He opened the door another inch. "You should have left it alone," Carl said quietly. Logan held his stare. "I think," he replied, voice calm, "you're the one who thought you left me with nothing." Carl's expression flickered for half a second. Then he stepped back. "This isn't over." The SUV door slammed shut. The engine roared. Logan watched it disappear through the trees. He closed the rear door and slid the deadbolt into place. Boone remained facing the entrance long after the sound of the engine faded. Logan returned to the kitchen wall and stared at the panel. Beyond behind it lay something Carl had not expected him to find. And now Carl knew he was looking. The uncertainty was gone. What remained was something sharper, something moving. Logan did not screw the metal panel back into place. He left it leaning loosely against the kitchen wall and carried the envelope into the office instead. Boone followed without being told, glancing once over his shoulder toward the back hallway, before settling across the doorway again. Logan shut the office door and locked it. The overhead light hummed faintly. Snow brushed against the siding outside with a steady whisper. He laid the documents flat on the desk. Black timber smoked sauce. The name felt older than the marriage, older than the house, older than the mortgage payments and the quiet negotiations that had taken everything else. And he remembered the first batch. He'd smoked peppers and tomatoes behind the restaurant one autumn afternoon, experimenting with mesquite he'd hauled back from a hunting trip. He'd written down measurements in a cheap spiral notebook. Brown sugar, vinegar, black pepper, molasses. He'd joked about bottling it someday. He did not remember registering it. He flipped through the pages slowly. Trademark filing date. Federal registration number. His signature at the bottom of the page. Clean. Undisputed. 5 years before he married Linda. Separate property. The phrase formed silently in his mind. He leaned back in the chair. Boone's head lifted. Outside, tires crunched over snow again. Logan did not rush to the window this time. He stood slowly, moved toward the side slit of glass near the office door, and angled his body against the wall before looking out. Different vehicle. A red pickup from the local feed store. It drove past without stopping. Logan exhaled once and returned to the desk. He picked up the small glass jar he had brought in with him. The lid resisted slightly before giving way with a soft, metallic pop. The scent rose immediately. Deep smoke, vinegar bite, something earthy beneath it. Boone's nose twitched. Logan dipped a fingertip into the sauce and touched it to his tongue. The flavor hit in layers. Sweet first, then heat, then smoke that lingered. He closed his eyes for a moment. The kitchen years ago. The back patio. Tourists asking if they could buy a bottle. Linda standing at the register saying they weren't licensed for retail distribution. Licensed. And he opened his eyes and looked again at the documents. He had been licensed. At least once. The office door handle rattled. Not violently. Just once. Boone rose instantly, body angled toward the sound, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Logan stood. The handle rattled again. He stepped into the hallway, stopping several feet from the door. "Closed," he called out evenly. A pause, then a different voice. Not Carl. "You inside, Logan?" He recognized it. Martha Keene, former floor manager. He unlocked the door but opened it only halfway. Martha stood bundled in a thick wool coat, snow clinging to her boots. Her hair, once dark brown, now streaked heavily with gray. "I heard the lights were back on," she said, glancing past him into the dim dining room. "They are." She stepped inside without waiting for permission. But Boone watched her but did not advance. "I thought this place was done," Martha said quietly. "Linda told everyone it was." "She doesn't own it." Martha turned sharply toward him. "She told us she did." Logan didn't respond. Martha's eyes scanned the room slowly. "You reopening?" "I might." She nodded once. Be careful. The word landed heavier than it sounded. With what? Logan asked. With Carl Whitmore. Logan's jaw tightened slightly. He's been sniffing around this property for years. Said he wanted to tear it down and put in a boutique ski lodge extension. Said it was wasted space. He made an offer yesterday. Martha's expression didn't change, but something in her shoulders shifted. Then he knows. Knows what? That this land isn't worthless. Logan studied her carefully. You knew about something? She hesitated. I knew he wanted it bad. Why? Martha shook her head slowly. I never asked. Boone moved closer to Logan's side. Martha glanced down at the dog. He always liked me, she murmured softly. Boone didn't respond. Martha looked back up at Logan. You should talk to a lawyer before you do anything else. I will. She nodded once and stepped back toward the door. Whatever's in here, Logan. It's not just about sauce. The door closed behind her. Silence returned. Logan locked it again. He stood in the middle of the dining room, looking across the empty tables. Iron Skillet Grill sat on nearly 3 acres of highway-adjacent land at the base of a ski route that had expanded every year since closing. He had never cared about real estate value, when he had cared about brisket and eggs and keeping the fryer running. But Carl Whitmore cared about land, and now he cared about whatever was hidden behind that kitchen wall. Logan returned to the office and dialed Rachel Dunn's number. She answered on the 3rd ring. Logan Hayes, she said evenly. You ever handle intellectual property cases? A pause. Occasionally. Why? I found something. He did not explain over the phone. They agreed to meet in Durango the next morning. That night, Logan slept lightly in the office chair rather than the cot. Boone remained positioned across the doorway. Around 2 a.m., headlights swept briefly across the front windows. Logan's eyes opened instantly. The engine outside idled for several seconds, then cut. Bootsteps on snow. Boone was already upright, silent. The rear door handle moved, harder this time. Then a metallic snap. The deadbolt held. A sharp object scraped against the lock housing. Logan stepped into the hallway, keeping his body flush against the wall beside the door. Boone stood directly in front of the entrance, shoulders squared. The scraping stopped. A whisper of movement outside. Then, the sound of glass shattering, not at the door, at the side window near the kitchen. Logan moved without thinking. Clear left, clear right. He entered the kitchen low. Cold air rushed through the broken pane. A dark shape moved near the freezer. Boone launched forward. A shout from the intruder. A crash of metal trays hitting the floor. Logan flipped on the overhead light. A masked figure scrambled toward the rear exit. Boone clamped down onto the man's sleeve, pulling hard. The fabric tore. The man swung an elbow backward, striking Boone's shoulder. Boone yelped but did not release immediately. Logan reached the doorway just as the intruder kicked free and bolted into the snow. He did not chase. He checked Boone first. The dog stood rigid, breathing heavy but steady. A shallow cut ran along his left shoulder where something sharp had grazed him. Not deep, but bleeding. Logan knelt immediately. Stay. Boone froze. Logan pressed pressure with a clean towel from the prep shelf, movements automatic and precise. Bleeding slowed quickly. The kitchen smelled of broken glass and cold air. Snow blew through the shattered window on over the tile. Logan stood and looked toward the wall panel. It remained loose, untouched. The intruder hadn't known exactly where to look. He had been searching, not retrieving. Logan's mind sharpened. Carl hadn't come for conversation. He had come to confirm. And now someone had come to break in. Boone leaned lightly into Logan's leg, injured shoulder trembling faintly, but posture still protective. Logan rested a hand on the dog's neck. You found it first, he said quietly. Outside, the forest remained dark and still. Inside, broken glass glittered across the floor under fluorescent light. The uncertainty from days ago was gone. This was no accident. Whatever sat behind that wall had shifted the balance. and Carl Whitmore had just shown his hand. Logan did not call the sheriff. He taped a sheet of plastic over the shattered kitchen window and wedged a prep table against it to block the draft. Snow still seeped in around the edges, dusting the tile like ash. Boone stood close but didn't lie down. Weight kept slightly off his injured shoulder. The cut was shallow, clean, likely from broken glass or a blade edge meant for intimidation, not a deep strike. Logan carried a small first aid kit from the truck and cleaned the wound under the harsh kitchen light. His movements were steady, exact. He clipped fur around the cut, flushed it with saline, pressed gauze firmly. Boone did not pull away. Logan wrapped the shoulder with elastic bandage, securing it just tight enough to hold without restricting movement. "You're still on duty," Logan muttered. Boone's eyes never left the back door. By dawn, Logan had removed the safe entirely. He unbolted it from the foundation and carried it, slowly, carefully, into the office, and locking it inside the filing cabinet after spinning the dial closed. He screwed the metal wall panel back into place so precisely that no casual eye would notice it had ever been disturbed. Then he waited. At 9:30 sharp, a silver Range Rover rolled into the parking lot. Carl Whitmore stepped out, dressed in pressed jeans, dark boots, and a wool coat that probably cost more than Logan's truck. He did not knock this time. He walked straight to the front door and rapped his knuckles against the glass. Logan opened it halfway. Boone stood slightly behind him, posture stiff but controlled. Carl's gaze drifted past Logan toward the interior, then toward the kitchen hallway. "I heard about the break-in," Carl said evenly. "Did you?" Carl smiled faintly. "Pagosa's small." "Strange timing," Carl shrugged. "Empty buildings invite attention." Logan didn't answer. Carl shifted his weight. "You sure you want to deal with this headache? I'm prepared to make an offer today. Cash. Clean transfer. You walk away with more than you started." Logan looked at the snow blowing across the lot. "I thought you said it wasn't worth anything." Carl's smile thinned. "Market conditions change." Boone stepped forward slightly, positioning himself between the two men without touching either. Carl glanced down at the dog's wrapped shoulder. "Looks like someone already paid the price." The words landed wrong. Logan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "You should go." Carl studied him carefully, measuring. "There are complications you don't see yet," Carl said softly. "Legal ones, financial ones, But sometimes assets discovered late become contested. Contested by who? By people with better lawyers." Logan held his stare. "I have one." Carl's eyes narrowed just a fraction. "That so?" "Yes." Silence hung between them. Carl stepped back. "You don't have the infrastructure to make that sauce matter," he said casually. "You don't have distribution. You don't have capital. You barely have power hooked up." Logan didn't respond. Carl looked once more at the building, then back at Logan. "I'll give you a week," he said. "After that, the numbers won't be as generous." He turned and walked toward his vehicle. The Range Rover door shut with a muted thud. The engine purred to life and rolled away without spinning tires. Logan closed the door slowly. Boone remained facing the lot long after Carl disappeared. And inside the office, Logan unlocked the filing cabinet and removed the safe again. He pulled out the trademark registration and studied it carefully. 5 years before marriage. Registered solely in his name. No record of transfer. He took out his phone and dialed Rachel Dunn. She answered on the second ring. "I'll be there in 40 minutes, she said when he finished explaining. "Bring everything." He loaded the documents into a canvas bag and helped Boone into the truck. The drive to Durango cut through narrow mountain passes glazed with ice. Snowmelt ran thin along the roadside, catching sunlight in sharp flashes. Boone rested his head on the seat, but did not sleep. At Rachel's office, a small brick building with a faded brass plaque, Logan placed the envelope on her desk. She read without interruption. The office was quiet except for the faint hum of a heater and the rustle of paper. Finally, she removed her glasses and looked up. "This is registered pre-marriage," she said. "There's no evidence of commingling, no transfer, no joint ownership." "He'll try." He already has, she replied evenly. Carl Whitmore filed an inquiry this morning, claiming the commercial value arose post-divorce and should be subject to review. Logan absorbed that without visible reaction. Rachel leaned back slightly. He's testing leverage. He broke in. Her eyes sharpened. You have proof? No. Then we move legally. She slid the documents back toward him. File for affirmation of separate property immediately. Secure valuation. And if anyone attempts physical intimidation again, you document everything. Logan nodded once. Aunt Rachel paused. Why do you think your ex left you the restaurant? Logan met her gaze. I'm starting to think she didn't. Rachel didn't smile. Then someone else wanted it. They left the office with papers filed electronically before sunset. On the drive back to Pagosa Springs, the sky darkened early. Storm clouds rolled in low over the peaks, turning the snowfields gray. Halfway up the mountain road, Logan's phone rang. Tyler. Logan let it ring twice before answering. Dad? Tyler's voice carried tension beneath its surface. You found something, Tyler said. Logan watched the road carefully. Who told you that? Silence on the other end. Mom said there might be documents in the building. What kind of documents? Business stuff. Logan felt Boone's head lift at the change in his breathing. What did Carl promise you? Logan asked quietly. Nothing, Tyler said quickly. Too quickly. I'm just asking. Logan did not raise his voice. Don't ask again. The line went silent. Then Tyler spoke more softly. Dad, if this turns into a fight, you won't win. Logan watched snow begin to fall again through the windshield. Not everything's a fight, he replied. He ended the call. By the time they reached the restaurant, wind had picked up sharply. Snow blew sideways across the parking lot, erasing tire tracks from earlier. Logan stepped out and immediately sensed something off. Boone did too. The rear door stood slightly ajar. Just an inch. Logan felt the cold move through him, but his posture remained steady. He motioned Boone to stay close. They approached carefully. The door latch had been pried again. And this time the deadbolt had bent inward. Logan pushed the door open slowly. The kitchen lights were off. The plastic covering the broken window flapped violently in the wind. He flipped the switch. The room illuminated. The metal wall panel lay on the floor. The safe was gone. For half a second, everything inside Logan went completely still. Boone moved first. He rushed forward, sniffing the floor near the empty space where the safe had been. The concrete showed scrape marks. The bolts had been sheared clean. Professional tools. Logan's eyes moved slowly across the kitchen. Drawers were pulled open. Cabinets left hanging. But nothing else was taken. Only the safe. Boone began pacing in tight circles, nose to the tile. Logan stepped backward slowly, calculating. He had removed the safe. He had locked it in the office cabinet. He turned sharply and moved down the hallway. The office door was closed. Locked. He opened it carefully. The filing cabinet remained untouched. He unlocked it. The safe sat exactly where he had placed it. Logan exhaled once. They had torn open the wall, expecting to find it still there. They had searched the kitchen and left. They had not found what they came for. Boone stopped pacing and returned to Logan's side. Logan closed the cabinet again and rested his palm flat against the steel. Carl had escalated, but he had miscalculated. Logan stepped back into the kitchen and studied the damage. Snow blew across the floor in thin white streaks. The wall panel leaned against a prep table, screws scattered across tile. Boone stood beside him, a shoulder bandage stark white against dark fur. Logan felt the shift settle fully now. This was no longer about loss. It was about defense. Carl believed he had left a broken man with a broken building. He did not realize the building still held leverage. Logan turned off the lights and stood in the dark kitchen for a long moment, listening to the wind. Boone pressed lightly against his leg. The next move would not be quiet, and this time Logan would be ready. He did not sleep in the office that night. He stayed awake in the dining room, seated at a booth facing the rear hallway, a thermos of coffee untouched in front of him. Boone lay on the bench beside him, injured shoulder wrapped but posture upright, eyes tracking every sound. Wind moved along the roofline in long, low waves. As somewhere in the forest beyond the parking lot, a branch snapped under the weight of snow. Logan had repositioned the safe before midnight. He moved it out of the filing cabinet and into the false ceiling above the office restroom, a space only accessible by removing 2 vent panels. He had done it methodically, step by step, without rushing. Old habit. Secure the asset. Change the location. Brake pattern. He had also installed 2 new motion lights outside the rear entrance and replaced the bent deadbolt with a reinforced steel plate. He didn't call contractors. He handled it himself. Control what you can. At dawn, snow lay thick and undisturbed across the lot. Boone finally lowered his head. Logan's phone vibrated on the table. Tyler. Logan stared at the name for a moment before answering. Dad. Tyler's voice carried strain this time, not just tension. You filed something, Tyler said. Yes. You didn't tell anyone? No. Silence stretched across the line. Tyler cleared his throat. Carl says this is going to get complicated. Carl says a lot of things. You don't understand how this works. Logan's eyes moved to the back hallway. I understand paperwork, he replied evenly. I understand registration dates. Tyler hesitated. You didn't even remember filing that trademark? Logan did not react outwardly. How do you know that? He asked quietly. Another pause. Mom told me. Logan leaned back slightly in the booth. She shouldn't know what I remember. Tyler's breathing shifted. She says you're not thinking clearly, that you're being stubborn. Logan's gaze rested on Boone, but Boone's ear twitched at a passing truck on the highway. Tyler, Logan said, voice steady. Did you give Carl anything? What do you mean? Did you send him documents, copies, photos? Tyler didn't answer immediately. Logan didn't push. He waited. Finally, Tyler spoke quieter than before. He asked if there were papers in the building. I said there might be. That's not what I asked. Tyler exhaled sharply. I forwarded him one message, that's it. Logan closed his eyes briefly. What message? The one where you said you found something. Logan opened his eyes again. And he took that to court. He said it was just a precaution. Logan stood slowly and walked toward the kitchen window, watching snow drift against the plastic covering. You know what a precaution looks like? Logan asked softly. Tyler didn't respond. It doesn't look like someone breaking a window at 2 a.m. The line went quiet. Tyler's voice returned, lower. Dad, did someone break in? Yes. Another silence. Tyler's next words were not defensive. They're not supposed to do that. Logan leaned his forearm against the wall. Supposed to doesn't mean anything. On the other end, Logan heard the faint echo of an office. Voices in the background. Keyboard clicks. You need to sell it, Tyler said suddenly. Just sell it and walk away. This is bigger than you think. Bigger how? Carl's investors don't like delays. He doesn't like losing. Logan's jaw tightened. Then he should have left it alone. Tyler's breathing grew uneven. You don't understand what's attached to this. Then tell me. A long pause. I can't. The call ended without goodbye. Logan lowered the phone slowly. Boone had stood during the conversation, watching Logan's posture change in subtle increments. The dog stepped closer, pressing lightly against his thigh. Logan rested a hand on Boone's head. Tyler hadn't denied it. He hadn't denied forwarding more than one message. Logan returned to the office and removed the safe from the ceiling compartment. He opened it again, scanning the documents more carefully this time. Beneath the trademark filings lay something he hadn't examined closely before, a preliminary distribution agreement with a regional supplier out of Albuquerque, dated 8 years ago. Signed by Logan. But the final signature page bore a second name, Carl Whitmore. Logan froze. The agreement was labeled Provisional Investment Structure. He read the paragraph slowly. Carl had funded a small-scale bottling expansion trial during the final year the restaurant operated. In exchange, he would receive first right of refusal for any future sale of the trademark. Logan's memory flickered faintly. Carl had been just a local developer back then. He'd stopped by one afternoon talking about expanding tourism properties near ski season. He'd sampled the sauce. He'd made comments about potential. Logan hadn't remembered signing anything beyond casual paperwork. But the signature was there. Carl's investment had never been activated. The restaurant had closed before the trial shipment launched. The clause had expired after 5 years if unused. Logan read that line twice. Expired. Carl no longer had claim, but he believed he might revive it under dispute. Logan closed the safe carefully. This wasn't about land. It was about control. Boone suddenly lifted his head sharply. A car door slammed outside. Logan moved to the front window. Linda stood near the entrance. She wore a dark coat and gloves, her posture stiff against the cold. Logan did not open the door immediately. He watched her expression through the glass. She looked older than she had weeks ago. When he finally opened it halfway, she stepped forward. "You shouldn't be doing this," she said quietly. "Doing what?" "Digging." Logan didn't respond. Her gaze flicked past him into the dim restaurant. "Carl invested in that product years ago. Provisionally." Her eyes sharpened slightly. "So you did read it?" Logan held her stare. "Oh, you thought I wouldn't." Linda exhaled slowly. "He built projections around it. He's leveraged parts of his portfolio expecting that asset to mature. That's his mistake. You don't understand how interconnected this is." "Then explain it." She hesitated. "There are lenders involved. That's not my problem. It will be if you keep pushing." Logan stepped fully into the doorway now, blocking the entrance. "I didn't push anything," he said evenly. "I reopened a building you left me." Her expression tightened. "I left you something manageable. You left me a liability, and you turned it into a weapon." The wind picked up, lifting strands of her hair. Boone stepped into view beside Logan. Linda's gaze dropped to the bandage on Boone's shoulder. "What happened?" "Someone broke in." Her jaw set. "Oh, Carl wouldn't." "He did." She fell silent. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she lowered her voice. "You're going to get Tyler caught in something he can't handle." Logan's eyes did not shift. "Tyler's already in it." Linda flinched slightly at that. "He's trying to protect you." "From what?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped back toward her car. "You should have sold it," she said softly, "before you knew what it was." Logan closed the door without replying. He stood inside the restaurant, breathing evenly, watching her vehicle disappear into the falling snow. Boone remained beside him, posture still firm. Logan walked back to the office and placed the safe on the desk. He no longer felt uncertain. He felt surrounded. Carl, Linda, Tyler, investors, lenders, all circling something they believed still belonged to them. Logan spun the safe dial closed and locked it again. He looked at Boone. "Looks like we're not just reopening a diner." Boone blinked slowly, as if already aware. Outside, the snow thickened, covering tire tracks and broken glass alike. But beneath that quiet surface, lines had already been drawn. Logan did not turn on the overhead lights that night. He kept the restaurant dim, only the office lamp glowing low and one kitchen fixture left on above the stove. Enough to see, not enough to silhouette himself against the windows. He had learned long ago that bright light makes you a target. Boone lay out near the back hallway, head up, ears pivoting at every shift in pressure outside the walls. The bandage on his shoulder was clean but tight, and he favored the leg slightly when standing, though he tried not to show it. Logan moved through the building once more before settling. He checked the new reinforced plate on the rear door, tested the screws in the window frame, adjusted the motion lights so they triggered earlier across the lot. He dragged 2 heavy flour bins against the kitchen entry, not to barricade, just to slow anyone who moved quickly. Layer defense, delay entry, force noise. He returned to the booth facing the hallway and set his phone on the table. No new calls. He rested his elbows on the tabletop and stared at nothing for a long time. Around midnight, the heater kicked on. The sudden mechanical hum split the silence. Logan's spine snapped upright before his mind caught up. His right hand dropped instinctively toward his hip. No sidearm, no vest, just a booth in a dark restaurant. Boone was already standing. The hum continued steadily, ordinary, harmless. Logan blinked hard once. Breathe in. Count 4. Release. The heater shut off. Silence returned, but it wasn't empty silence. It carried weight. He closed his eyes briefly, and the dark behind them shifted. Different dark. A narrow alley in Ramadi. Heat pressing down like a hand. A generator sputtering before the first crack of rifle fire echoed from a rooftop. He opened his eyes again quickly. Colorado. Snow. Wood paneling. He stood and walked toward the kitchen sink, splashing cold water onto his face. Boone followed but stayed one pace behind. At 2 a.m, something metallic clanged outside. Not glass. Not the door. A loose sign chain against the building. But the sound hit sharp and sudden, while Logan dropped to a knee behind the counter before he even realized he had moved. His body was already low, already scanning angles. Clear left, clear right, contact front. He held position for several seconds, breathing shallow through his nose. Nothing followed. No footsteps. No voices. Just wind. Boone approached slowly and pressed his muzzle against Logan's shoulder. The dog didn't whine, didn't lick. Just wait. Grounding. Logan exhaled. He stood up slowly this time. You're still here, he muttered quietly. Boone blinked once. The rest of the night passed in fragments. Logan didn't sleep. He drifted into short, sharp bursts of half-dream and jerked awake each time the building shifted. At dawn, pale light crept through the front windows. Snow had piled against the lower panes. Boone finally lay down fully, chin on paws. Logan stepped outside to check the perimeter. Fresh snow erased all tracks from the previous day. But one detail caught his eye. Near the back entrance, where the motion light covered only half the lot, 2 shallow indentations broke the otherwise smooth surface. Boot prints. Recent. Not deep enough to indicate someone standing long, but there. Watching. Logan crouched and measured the stride length visually. Male. Average height. Confident step. He stood slowly and scanned the tree line. No movement. No vehicles. He returned inside without brushing the prints away. Let them see he'd noticed. Inside, he brewed coffee again and sat at the desk, pulling out the distribution agreement once more. He examined Carl's provisional investment clause carefully. The expiration date had passed. Yes, the clause was void unless renewed in writing. There was no renewal. Carl had no legal foothold, but legal and practical were different things. Logan's phone buzzed. Rachel. The judge scheduled a preliminary hearing, she said without greeting. Tomorrow afternoon in Archuleta County. Fast. He pushed for urgency. Logan nodded slightly, even though she couldn't see him. What's his argument? He's claiming concealment, that you deliberately withheld an asset during divorce proceedings. Logan's jaw tightened. I didn't remember it. I know, Rachel replied calmly, but that's not the point. He's trying to create procedural leverage. And we shut it down. Logan glanced toward the kitchen where Boone had resumed his watch near the hallway. I'll be there. After the call ended, Logan walked to the front of the restaurant and stood near the glass doors. He imagined the place open again. Coffee steaming on tables, hunters shaking snow from their coats. The smell of smoke from the kitchen drifting into the dining room. Boone's ears flicked at a distant engine sound. A white utility truck drove past without stopping. Logan felt something shift internally. Not fear this time, but calculation. If Carl believed pressure would make him fold, he would escalate. Pressure required weakness. Logan would not show it. He spent the morning repairing the broken window properly. He installed plywood behind the glass frame and secured it with steel brackets. He replaced the camera mounted above the rear door and repositioned it to cover the blind spot near the freezer wall. He tested the system twice. Then he moved the safe again. This time, he placed it inside the hollow base of an old upright freezer that no longer worked, bolting it down through the bottom panel. Anyone searching the office would find nothing. He spun the dial closed and stepped back. Boone watched every movement. At noon, Logan fed him and removed the bandage carefully. The wound had clotted cleanly. "You'll keep the scar," Logan murmured. Boone's tail gave a single, slow thump against the tile. By early afternoon, clouds lifted slightly, revealing a narrow strip of blue sky over the mountains. Logan locked the building and drove toward town. He didn't notice the dark sedan following at first. It kept 2 cars back, then 1. When he slowed at an intersection, it slowed too. Logan didn't turn his head. He adjusted the rearview mirror subtly. Went black sedan, no front plate. He continued driving normally until he reached a gas station near the courthouse. He pulled in without signaling. The sedan drove past. Logan watched it through the reflection in the gas pump's chrome panel. The car didn't stop, but it slowed as it passed. Message received. Boone sat upright in the passenger seat, watching through the windshield. Logan finished fueling and returned to the truck. Tomorrow would not be about intimidation. It would be about paper. And paper, he understood. He had learned long ago that sometimes the quietest fights were the most decisive. He started the engine and headed back toward the mountains. Snow still clung to the pine branches. The road curved upward toward Iron Skillet Grill. Beside him, Boone settled down, injured shoulder stiff but steady. But Logan rested one hand briefly on the steering wheel, then on Boone's back. He had lost a house. He had lost accounts. He had lost sleep. But he had not lost clarity. Tomorrow, in a courtroom instead of a kitchen, lines would be tested. And this time, he would not flinch at the sound of metal. The courthouse in Archuleta County sat low and square against the mountains, brick faded by decades of winter wind. Snow clung to the steps and thin ridges where boots had tracked in and out since morning. Logan arrived early. He always arrived early. Boone walked beside him on a short lead, vest snug across his back. The words "service dog" stitched clean in white. The bandage was gone now, but a faint line of darker fur marked the healing cut beneath. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and floor polish. Not voices echoed softly in the hallway outside Courtroom B. Logan stood against the wall, back straight, hands resting loosely in front of him. Boone sat at his left side, eyes forward, body still. Rachel Dunn approached from the far end of the corridor, briefcase tucked under her arm. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said quietly. "I didn't." She nodded once. "Good." Carl Whitmore arrived 10 minutes later. He wore a tailored navy coat and moved with practiced calm, accompanied by a man Logan didn't recognize. Thin, sharp-faced, carrying a leather portfolio. Behind them walked Linda. Tyler followed several paces back. Tyler's eyes flicked toward Logan, but didn't hold. Boone's ears angled slightly toward the group, but he didn't rise. Carl's gaze settled briefly on the dog, then on Logan. No smile today. The courtroom doors opened. The room was smaller than Logan expected. Wood-paneled walls, a narrow bench, 3 rows of seating behind the counsel tables, a large seal mounted above the judge's chair. Logan took his seat beside Rachel. Boone lay quietly at his feet, chin resting on paws. Carl sat across the aisle. Tyler remained behind him, hands clasped too tightly. The judge entered without ceremony. A woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back neatly, expression unreadable. She took her seat and glanced down at the file before her. "Whitmore versus Hayes," she said evenly. Carl's attorney stood first. He spoke with smooth rhythm, outlining his argument. Newly discovered asset, potential concealment, commercial value arising during dissolution, need for supplemental review. Logan listened without moving, and he watched the attorney's hands more than his face. Confident gestures, controlled pauses, paper strategy. Rachel rose when it was her turn. She didn't pace. She didn't raise her voice. She walked directly to the clerk, handed over certified copies of the trademark registration and expiration clause, and returned to her position. This intellectual property was registered 5 years prior to marriage, she said clearly. It was never transferred, never commingled. The provisional investment clause expired by its own terms without renewal. There is no legal basis for reclassification. The judge adjusted her glasses and read. The room fell quiet except for the faint rustle of paper. Logan felt Boone shift slightly under the table. Across the aisle, Carl's attorney leaned forward, attempting one more angle. See, the commercial activation occurred post-divorce, he pressed. Therefore, the value... The judge raised a hand. She looked directly at Carl's attorney. Counselor, separate property does not become marital because someone regrets its discovery. Silence. She turned a page deliberately. The registration date is clear. The clause has expired. There is no evidence of concealment. Petition for supplemental review is denied. Her gavel struck once. The sound was sharp but controlled. Logan did not move. He did not blink. He did not feel the jolt of metal he once would have. He simply exhaled slowly through his nose. Rachel leaned toward him. It's done, she said quietly. Across the aisle, Carl's jaw tightened visibly. Tyler looked down at the floor. Linda's gaze shifted away first. The judge stood and exited, and the room emptied quickly. Carl gathered his papers with deliberate calm, but his fingers pressed harder than necessary against the folder edges. As he passed Logan in the aisle, he paused. This isn't over, he said softly. Logan met his eyes. It was over 5 years ago. Carl's stare lingered half a second longer before he walked out. Tyler hesitated behind him. Dad, he began. Logan looked at him. Tyler swallowed. You don't understand what this triggers. What does it trigger? Logan asked evenly. Tyler didn't answer. He turned and followed Carl out of the courthouse. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds briefly, glinting off the snow-covered peaks. Boone stepped into the cold air beside Logan, posture steady. Rachel joined him on the steps. He's going to pivot, she said quietly. Oh, maybe not through you directly. Logan nodded once. Investors? He asked. Yes. And lenders? Yes. Logan looked toward the parking lot. Carl stood beside his Range Rover speaking sharply into his phone. His composure had fractured just slightly. Not loud, but tight. Logan felt no surge of triumph, no flare of satisfaction, just stillness. Paper had held. For now. He walked down the courthouse steps slowly, boots crunching against packed snow. Boone stayed close, head high, scanning the lot. A local reporter stood near the entrance, scribbling notes. Logan avoided eye contact. He didn't need a headline. He needed space. As he reached his truck, his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered. A calm, measured voice spoke. Mr. Hayes, this is Special Agent Donovan with the Regional Financial Crimes Task Force. Oh, I'd like to speak with you regarding documentation connected to Whitmore Development. Logan's grip tightened slightly on the phone. In what capacity? He asked. As a cooperating witness? Logan looked across the lot. Carl's vehicle was pulling away. Snow kicked up lightly behind the tires. I'll be in touch, Logan said, and ended the call. Boone watched him carefully. Rachel's words echoed in his mind. He's going to pivot. Logan opened the truck door and paused for a moment before climbing in. He did not look back at the courthouse. He did not look at Carl's departing vehicle. He started the engine and pulled onto the highway toward Pagosa Springs. The mountains stood unchanged under winter light. Inside the cab, Boone shifted once and settled down. Logan's hands rested steady on the steering wheel. The hearing had been short. 4 words had ended it. Separate property. Case dismissed. But paper had consequences. And somewhere beyond the snow-covered pines, something larger had just begun to unravel. Logan didn't hear from the federal agent again that afternoon. He didn't call back either. He drove straight to Iron Skillet Grill and parked where he could see both the highway and the rear access road. Old habits stayed alive in small decisions. Boone stepped out first, nose lifting into the air. testing scent and wind. Snow reflected light sharply across the empty lot. The place looked smaller in daylight than it had at night, less threatening, more exposed. Inside, the restaurant carried the faint smell of bleach and cold grease. Logan locked the door behind them and crossed to the office. He sat down at the desk and pulled the distribution folder closer again, reading every line as if it were a field report. Projected volume targets, initial pilot markets, signature clause. Carl's handwriting appeared once in the margins, a note suggesting expedited scaling via asset bundling. Logan's eyes narrowed slightly. Asset bundling. He reached for his laptop and searched Whitmore Development's filings publicly available through Colorado's business registry. He didn't move fast. He didn't rush. He scanned line by line. 3 subsidiary LLCs formed in the last 2 years, each connected to restaurant redevelopment projects, each listed under different holding structures. One name appeared twice in the documents. Tyler Hayes. Logan leaned back slowly. Boone raised his head from the floor, sensing the shift. Now, Tyler had signed as managing partner in 2 of the subsidiaries. Not primary owner, but signatory. Logan closed the laptop without expression. Outside, a snowplow passed along the highway, its blades scraping steady and rhythmic. He stepped into the kitchen and began prepping sauce. Black timber. The smell of smoked paprika and brown sugar filled the room as he stirred the pot over low heat. He moved with careful precision, measuring without measuring, taste adjusting by memory. Boone watched from a safe distance, nose twitching. Logan poured the thickened sauce into sterilized bottles one by one. Work grounded him. Heat, timing, control. The phone rang at 4:23. Tyler. Logan let it ring once more before answering. Dad? The voice carried strain beneath its surface. What is it? Logan asked evenly. Well, there was a pause. Are you talking to federal agents? Logan did not answer immediately. Instead, he capped another bottle and wiped the rim clean. I was contacted, he said finally. Silence on the other end. You can't do that, Tyler said quickly. You don't understand how this works. How what works? They'll audit everything, every transfer, every signature. Logan leaned against the counter. Then everything should hold up. It's not that simple. Boone stood now, moving closer to Logan's leg. What did you sign? Logan asked quietly. Tyler exhaled sharply. It was just paperwork. Carl said it was restructuring, tax positioning. And you signed. I trusted him. Logan didn't respond. He looked through the kitchen window toward the empty dining room. You didn't hide anything from me, did you? Tyler asked suddenly. About the sauce? Logan felt something settle in his chest. I didn't hide anything, he said. Another pause. You don't know what he's capable of, Tyler said. Logan glanced toward the back hallway instinctively. I have a pretty good idea. The call ended without goodbye. Boone pressed closer, body angled slightly toward the rear door. Logan followed the dog's gaze. Nothing visible. But the dog's posture was different now. Alert, not anxious. Logan walked to the security monitor mounted above the office doorway. The new camera feed flickered once before stabilizing. Rear lot, side entrance, dumpster. No movement. He switched angles. Front lot. A dark SUV sat parked half a block down the road. Engine idling. Too far for plates. Too close for coincidence. But Logan did not step outside. Instead, he reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a small notepad. He wrote down the time. Vehicle description. Partial identifying marks. Observation without confrontation. The SUV remained for nearly 7 minutes. Then it pulled away slowly. Boone did not relax immediately. Neither did Logan. At dusk, the federal agent called again. This is Special Agent Donovan. Logan stepped outside to take the call, letting cold air clear the kitchen heat from his lungs. You said cooperating witness, Logan said. Yes. We've opened a preliminary inquiry into Whitmore Development based on irregular financing patterns. I run a restaurant, Logan replied. You also hold intellectual property connected to his attempted expansion model. Logan watched his breath rise in small clouds. What do you need? Documentation. Dates. Any written communication suggesting coercion or misrepresentation. Logan thought of the broken window, the boot prints. Carl's quiet threat in the courtroom. You'll get what I have, he said. Inside, Boone barked once sharply. Short. Warning. Logan ended the call and moved quickly back inside. The rear door handle was rattling. Not violently. Testing. Logan approached along the wall, steps measured. Boone stood directly between him and the hallway. The handle stopped moving. A shadow crossed the frosted glass briefly, then retreated. Logan did not open the door. He did not shout. He waited. 3 full minutes passed. Silence returned. Boone's ears lowered slowly, but did not flatten. Logan checked the monitor again. No vehicle. No person visible. But the snow near the back entrance now carried fresh marks. 2 sets. Logan crouched beside Boone. Good work, he said quietly. He waited another 15 minutes before stepping outside. The tracks led only a short distance before fading into plowed snow. Whoever it was had parked farther away. Logan returned inside and locked the door again. He stood in the center of the dining room, looking at the empty tables. Paper had consequences. So did exposure. Carl had lost in court. Now he was scrambling. The pattern was familiar. Pressure. Probe. Escalate. Logan turned off the lights and stood in darkness for several seconds. He let his eyes adjust naturally. Shapes reformed. Edges sharpened. He walked back toward the office and pulled the freezer panel aside, checking the safe. Still secure. Boone lay down near the hallway again, but did not close his eyes. Logan pulled a chair near the office door and sat with his back against the wall. He rested his forearms on his knees. Outside, the mountains held their silence. Inside, something had shifted. Carl's structure was cracking. Tyler was frightened. Federal agents were asking questions. The sauce simmered gently on the stove, thick and dark. Logan did not smile. He did not feel victorious. He felt steadier. The fight had changed shape. And for the first time since the garage door slammed months ago, he sensed the ground settling under his boots instead of giving way. Logan woke before dawn. Not from a noise this time. From habit. The sky outside the office window was still dark blue, a thin gray line stretching behind the mountains. Boone was already awake, while watching him from the floor near the doorway. Today, Logan said quietly. Boone stood. The restaurant felt different in the early morning light. Not abandoned. Not threatened. Waiting. Logan moved with steady efficiency. He checked the burners, tested the fryer, refilled the coffee filters. The old griddle hissed when he poured water across it, steam rising like breath in winter air. He unlocked the front door at 6:45. The sign outside now read, "Iron Skillet Grill Open." The plywood behind the repaired window was painted to match the trim. From a distance, most people wouldn't notice. By 7, a pickup truck pulled into the lot. An older man stepped out, boots crunching in fresh snow. He paused at the door, glanced once at the sign, then stepped inside. The bell above the entrance gave a small metallic chime. Logan looked up from behind the counter. "Morning," the man said. "Morning," Logan replied. The man chose a booth near the window. Boone watched him carefully but did not rise. "What's good?" the man asked. "Coffee's hot," Logan said. "Biscuits in 15. The man nodded. More vehicles followed. A ski instructor still in layered gear. A couple from out of town holding hands. A rancher from outside town who had once eaten here when it was open years ago. Logan moved between stove and counter without wasted motion. Eggs cracked clean. Bacon laid flat. Coffee poured steady. Boone positioned himself halfway between kitchen and dining room, a quiet presence. When a child reached toward him, he leaned forward gently and allowed the small hand to brush his fur. No sudden movements. No tension. Just work. At 9:15, the dining room was nearly full. Logan placed the first bottle of black timber smoked sauce on the center table near the entrance. Dark glass, simple label, no flourish. The rancher uncapped it first. He tasted, paused, looked at Logan. That's new. Logan nodded. The man added another spoonful to his plate. By 10:30, every table held a bottle. Someone asked if they could buy one to take home. Logan hesitated only briefly before nodding. Cash drawer opened. First sale. The smell of smoke and pepper drifted through the room. Outside, snow melted slowly along the edges of the lot as sun climbed higher. Linda called at 11. Logan saw the name on the screen. He placed the phone face down on the counter and continued stirring a pot of chili. It rang again 5 minutes later. Boone's ears flicked at the vibration. Logan did not answer. At noon, Tyler walked in. The room quieted slightly. Tyler stood near the door for a moment, taking in the sight of a full dining room. Boone stood, but did not bark. Logan wiped his hands on a towel and stepped out from behind the counter. Tyler approached slowly. You reopened, he said. Yes. Tyler glanced around again. They're talking about you, he said. People talk. Not like this. Logan held his gaze. What are they saying? That the judge shut Carl down. Tyler swallowed. That investors are pulling back. Logan didn't respond. Tyler's eyes drifted toward the bottles on the tables. You're selling it? Yes. Tyler nodded slowly. He's being audited, Tyler said quietly. They froze one of the accounts. The words hung between them. Logan did not ask how Tyler knew. Oh, did you sign anything you shouldn't have? Logan asked. Tyler hesitated. I signed what he told me was restructuring paperwork. Logan watched his son's face carefully. Tyler looked older than he remembered. Lines near the eyes, shoulders slightly hunched. He told me it was growth, Tyler said. Boone moved closer to Logan's side. Tyler glanced down at the dog. He still sleeps near you? Tyler asked. Yes. Tyler nodded. Carl's voice carried faintly from the open doorway outside as someone's phone speaker crackled in the parking lot. Tyler stiffened. He thinks you set this up, Tyler said. Logan met his son's eyes. I didn't. Tyler looked like he wanted to say more. Instead, he stepped back. If agents call again, he said quietly, I might need to talk. You can, Logan replied. Tyler left without ordering food, while the afternoon carried steady traffic. Not overwhelming, not slow, just steady. At 4, the lunch crowd thinned. Logan stepped outside briefly. The mountains were sharp against a clear sky now. Boone followed. The lot held tire tracks from a dozen vehicles. Normal tracks. Honest tracks. Logan rested one hand on the wooden railing near the entrance. The building no longer felt like a battleground. It felt like a foothold. His phone buzzed once more. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Hayes, Agent Donovan said. We executed a search warrant on Whitmore Development this morning. Logan didn't speak. We recovered documentation linking asset transfers to personal accounts, Donovan continued, including signatures from Mr. Tyler Hayes. Logan's jaw tightened slightly. Is my son being charged? He asked. Oh, not at this time. Cooperation matters. Logan looked across the lot. Boone stood near the door, watching the road. I'll cooperate, Logan said. We'll schedule a formal statement. The call ended. Inside, the coffee machine hissed softly. The day moved toward evening. By 7, the dining room was nearly empty. Logan wiped down the last table and counted the register. Enough to cover tomorrow's inventory. More than he expected. Boone stretched near the door, favoring his shoulder only slightly now. Logan locked the front entrance and turned off the lights one by one. He stood in the dim kitchen a moment longer, listening. No rattling handles, no idling engines, just the hum of refrigeration and the distant sound of wind through pine trees. He walked to the hallway and knelt beside Boone. Yet the faint scar along the dog's shoulder caught the light. Logan rested his palm there briefly. You held, he murmured. Boone leaned into the touch. Outside, the mountains darkened again. But this time, the darkness did not feel like something closing in. It felt like something settling into place. Iron skillet grill stood lit from within against the cold Colorado night. And for the first time in months, Logan locked the door, not because he was retreating, but because he had something worth protecting. The parking lot emptied slowly. A final pickup truck rolled out toward the highway, taillights fading between pine trees. Snow along the edges of the lot reflected the red glow for a few seconds after the vehicle disappeared. Logan stood on the wooden walkway outside Iron Skillet Grill, keys resting in his palm. The cold had sharpened again with nightfall. It cut clean across his cheeks, steady and honest. Boone circled once in the snow, nose low, tracing the scent of the day's visitors. Then he returned to Logan's side without being called. Inside, the restaurant still held warmth. Coffee lingered in the air. The last of the chili simmered low on the back burner. Logan walked through the dining room one final time, checking chairs, scanning corners, making sure nothing was out of place. The bottles of black timber sauce stood upright on each table like small sentries. He turned off the overhead lights. Darkness settled in layers. The only glow came from the exit sign above the kitchen door and the faint blue from the security monitor. Boone chose his place near the hallway again, body angled toward the rear entrance. As Logan did not sleep in the office chair tonight, he stretched a thin mattress behind the counter instead, closer to the center of the building. Better vantage point, less exposure from windows. He lay down without removing his boots. Boone lay beside him. The night was quiet. No rattling handles, no engines idling down the road, just wind pushing softly against siding and the distant groan of tree branches shifting under frost. Around midnight, Logan's phone vibrated once against the floor. He reached for it immediately. Tyler. Logan sat up slowly and answered. The line carried breathing first, then words. They froze the operating accounts, Tyler said. His voice no longer carried argument or edge, only strain. For Whitmore Development? Logan asked. Yes. Silence filled the space between them. Dad. They executed warrants at the main office. Laptops, files, everything. Logan leaned back against the counter, eyes adjusting to the dark. And, he asked, they're asking about the restaurant expansions, the pilot funding, my signatures. Boone lifted his head, watching Logan carefully. Tell the truth, Logan said. I did what Carl told me, Tyler replied quickly. He said the sauce was already secured, that you'd signed preliminary transfer terms. Logan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. I never signed anything transferring ownership. I know that now. Snow slid from the roof outside with a soft thud. Tyler exhaled slowly. He's blaming me, Tyler said, saying I pushed for scaling, that I handled the paperwork. Logan closed his eyes briefly. In the darkness behind them, he saw not a rock, not Ramadi, but a younger Tyler standing in a little league field, helmet too big, waiting for a pitch that never came. What are you asking me? Logan said. Another pause. If agents call again, Tyler said quietly, I need you to confirm the registration date, and that I didn't have access to the original trademark filing. I will, Logan said. The line went quiet. I didn't mean for this to happen, Tyler added. Logan looked down at Boone, who had shifted closer. Intent doesn't stop consequences, Logan said. Tyler didn't argue. I'll come by tomorrow, he said. The call ended without tension this time. Just wait. Logan lowered the phone slowly. Boone's head rested against Logan's knee. Outside, the mountains held their shape under starlight. Logan stood and walked to the rear door, checking the lock once more. Solid. He adjusted the motion light slightly higher to widen its arc. Layer defense. He returned to the center of the room and sat again. This time, he did not lie down immediately. He let the silence settle. Around 2 a.m, headlights swept briefly across the front windows as a car passed along the highway. Logan did not flinch. He listened to the engine fade. Boone did not rise. By 3, exhaustion finally took hold. Logan drifted into shallow sleep. A sharp metallic clang tore through the darkness. His eyes snapped open. Boone was already on his feet, ears rigid. The sound came again. Metal against metal. Not the door, not the handle. The dumpster behind the building. Logan rose quietly, moving along the wall. He didn't reach for anything. He didn't rush. Well, he stepped into the office and checked the monitor. A shadow moved near the back lot, too tall for an animal. The figure bent near the dumpster briefly, then straightened. Boone gave a low growl. Logan stepped to the rear door, but did not open it. Instead, he flipped the floodlight on. Bright white light flooded the lot. The figure flinched, face partially visible now. Not Carl, not anyone Logan recognized. The man shielded his eyes, then turned and ran toward a dark sedan parked near the tree line. The engine roared to life. Tires spun against snow before catching traction. The car disappeared into the darkness. Logan did not chase. He watched until the taillights vanished. Boone remained rigid until the engine sound faded completely. Logan stepped outside only after waiting a full minute. The cold air struck hard against his lungs. The dumpster lid was dented where it had been struck. Footprints led from the dumpster to where the sedan had been parked. Logan crouched, examining the prints carefully. Heavy tread, same pattern as before. Consistent stride, not random vandalism. Probe, message. He stood slowly and scanned the trees. No movement. Inside again, he secured the door. Boone stayed close, leaning lightly against his leg. Logan knelt and checked the dog's shoulder, running his fingers gently across the faint scar. "You're not going anywhere," he said quietly. Boone's tail moved once. Morning would come soon. So would Tyler. So would agents. Carl's structure was collapsing from the inside. But collapse is messy. It sends debris outward. Logan returned to the center of the dining room and stood between the tables. The sauce bottles reflected faint starlight through the windows. He understood now that this was no longer just about ownership. It was about exposure. Truth moving outward. He sat back down against the counter and waited for dawn. He did not feel fear. He did not feel victory. He felt readiness. And outside, beneath the mountains of Colorado, the snow kept falling, quietly covering the footprints that would no longer matter. Dawn came slowly to Pagosa Springs. A pale line of silver edged the peaks before light spilled down through the pines and across the highway. The restaurant windows caught the first glow and held it there, warm against the white of the parking lot. Logan was already on his feet. He had not slept more than an hour, but his movements were steady. Coffee grounds measured, water poured, stove lit, the small rituals that marked a day as beginning instead of continuing. Boone stood near the rear door watching the empty lot. The faint scar along his shoulder was barely visible now beneath thick winter fur. He carried it like he carried everything, without complaint. At 7 sharp, headlights turned into the lot. Not a dark sedan this time, a county-issued SUV. Logan stepped outside before it fully stopped. Agent Donovan exited from the driver's side, coat collar turned up against the cold. "Mr. Hayes," he said, offering a brief nod. Logan returned it. They stood in the snow, boots crunching softly. "We executed additional warrants last night," Donovan said. "Mr. Whitmore has retained counsel. Well, he's under active investigation." Logan said nothing. "We also reviewed communications between Whitmore Development and its subsidiaries," Donovan continued. "Your son appears to have been misled regarding certain asset transfers." Logan's jaw tightened slightly. "Is he being charged?" "Not if he cooperates." Logan nodded once. "He will," he said. Donovan studied him for a moment. "You handled yourself well," he added. Logan glanced toward the mountains. "I reopened a restaurant," he said quietly. "That's all." Donovan allowed a faint smile. "Sometimes that's enough." The SUV pulled away. Logan stood in the cold a moment longer before stepping back inside. Boone followed close behind. The dining room filled steadily that morning. Word had traveled. Locals came not out of curiosity but out of familiarity. They brought neighbors. They stayed longer than usual. They ordered coffee refills without asking about courtrooms or audits. A rancher approached the counter and placed cash down for 3 bottles of sauce. "You staying open?" he asked. "Yes." "Good." That was all. Near noon, the door opened again. Tyler stepped in. He looked tired. Not frightened this time, just worn down. Boone stood, then relaxed when Logan gave a small signal with his hand. Tyler approached the counter slowly. "They questioned me again," he said. Logan wiped his hands on a towel and waited. "I told them everything," Tyler continued. "About the restructuring, the bundling, the way he moved money between accounts." Logan nodded. "Good." Tyler glanced around the room. "I didn't think you'd actually reopen," he admitted, while Logan looked toward the kitchen. "I didn't either." Tyler exhaled slowly. "He's blaming everyone," he said. "Says the expansion model was my idea." Logan held his son's gaze. "Paper tells its own story," he said. Tyler swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. The words did not hang heavy. They settled. Logan did not reach out. He did not step forward. He simply nodded once. "Sit," he said. Tyler chose a booth near the window. Logan brought him a plate without asking what he wanted. Eggs, bacon, biscuits, the same meal Tyler used to order at 17 after football practice. Boone lay beside the booth, head resting near Tyler's boots. Tyler reached down slowly and let his fingers brush the dog's fur. "Still watching everything," he murmured. "Yes," Logan replied. The afternoon moved without incident. There's no dark sedans, no rattling handles, no sudden clangs against dumpsters. Just traffic. Laughter. The steady scrape of forks against plates. By evening, every bottle of black timber on the front counter had sold. Logan wrote the total down in a small ledger. Not for pride, for record. Outside, the sky shifted to deep blue. Snow along the lot's edge had begun to melt under tire heat and sunlight. Logan stepped outside once more before locking up. The mountains stood clear and sharp in the fading light. Boone stood beside him, shoulder brushing his leg. In the distance, smoke rose from chimneys across town. Normal smoke, ordinary lives. His phone vibrated once. Linda. He let it ring. It stopped, then rang again. He answered this time. "Logan," she began. He did not speak. "Carl says this will pass," she continued. "Oh, that investigation's fade." Logan looked at the snow near the entrance, now marked with honest footprints from customers. "Truth doesn't fade," he said. Silence. "You could have let it go," she said. "I did," he replied. He ended the call gently. Inside, he turned off the last light. The restaurant fell quiet. Boone lay in the center of the dining room, head up. Logan stood for a long moment, looking at the tables, the counter, the kitchen door. No one in the room knew what had been lost. They didn't know about the night the garage door slammed shut. They didn't know about falling to the floor at the sound of metal. They didn't know about the boot prints in snow or the dent in the dumpster. They only saw a man cooking and a dog lying patiently nearby. Logan locked the door and slipped the keys into his pocket, while he walked to the truck with Boone at his side. The scar along the dog's shoulder caught the last trace of daylight. Not large, not dramatic, just proof. He started the engine and let it idle briefly. The heater hummed steady. No flinch, no reflex, just sound. He drove slowly down the highway toward the edge of town. Behind him, Iron Skillet Grill stood lit against the mountains. Not because someone had taken everything, but because something had been left behind. And it had been enough. If you made it all the way to the end, I want to ask you something simple. Do you think Logan won because he fought back? Or because he never stopped standing? Type 1 in the comments if you believe loyalty is stronger than greed. Type 0 if you think greed always catches up in the end. Just one number. That's it. Well, and if Boone reminded you of a dog you've known, or if Logan felt a little too real, make sure you subscribe. There are more stories like this coming. Quiet strength, hard winters, loyalty that doesn't break. I'll see you in the next one.